Most people think low intelligence is obvious. They picture someone failing school, making huge mistakes, saying something ridiculous in public, or not knowing basic facts. They assume intelligence is a number, an IQ score, a degree, a resume line that proves you're smart. But psychology points to something far more uncomfortable. Your intelligence shows up in your daily behavior, long before it shows up in big outcomes. Not in one dramatic failure, in tiny habits you repeat without noticing. And here's the part nobody wants to hear. Those habits don't just make you look less sharp, they shape how your brain functions. The brain is plastic. It rewires based on what you do most. Attention, memory, impulse control, reasoning, and problem solving are all trainable systems. If your habits train your mind towards shortcuts, distraction, and avoidance, your thinking literally degrades. That's not an insult, it's a warning. Low intelligence isn't always a permanent trait. A lot of what we call being dumb is actually being untrained, unfocused, addicted to convenience, conditioned to avoid effort, living on mental autopilot. So in this video, we're going to talk about the subtle habits that quietly signal low intelligence and how they keep people stuck, not to shame you, to wake you up. Because if you can recognize the pattern, you can reverse it. And the man who can reverse it separates himself from 90% of the population. Let's start with the first one, magical thinking. Magical thinking is when your brain confuses coincidence with cause. You wore a certain shirt and had a good day, so now the shirt becomes lucky. You avoided stepping on cracks and nothing bad happened, so now you believe the cracks were the threat. You check your horoscope and it says financial opportunity. Then something small happens and you treat it like proof. To a lot of people, this looks harmless. It's just for fun, but psychologically, it reveals something. A mind that prefers comforting stories over evidence. A mind that would rather feel certain than think clearly. Real intelligence has a built-in pause. It asks, what's the mechanism? What's the evidence? What else could explain this? It doesn't accept meaning just because the pattern feels good. Magical thinking is lazy reasoning. It's outsourcing your logic to rituals and vibes. And once you get used to that, you start doing it everywhere. You start blaming your luck instead of your habits. You start blaming energy instead of your decisions. You start relying on superstition instead of skill. That's not neutral. That's a slow downgrade of your ability to solve real problems. Second habit, chronic sleep neglect. This is one of the clearest intelligence tells because it affects everything. Some people brag about surviving on 4 hours. They talk like sleep is weakness. They scroll until 3 a.m., wake up half dead, drink caffeine, and call it discipline. It isn't discipline. It's self-harm disguised as hustle. Sleep is when your brain consolidates memory, clears metabolic waste, stabilizes emotion, and restores attention. When you consistently short your sleep, you don't just feel tired. You lose cognitive power. Your working memory weakens. Your impulse control drops. Your emotional reactivity increases. Your ability to think long-term collapses. You become easier to manipulate, easier to trigger, easier to distract, easier to fool. Intelligent people protect sleep because they understand this simple reality. Your brain is your main weapon. If you keep dulling it, everything in your life becomes harder. Third habit, avoiding time alone. A lot of people cannot sit in silence for 10 minutes. The second they're alone, they need noise, music, podcasts, TV, a screen, anything to cover the sound of their own thoughts. They call it staying entertained. but often it's avoidance. Solitude forces processing, it forces reflection, it brings up unresolved thoughts, it demands you think without being carried by stimulation. Men with strong minds can handle solitude. They use it. They let their thoughts form. They review their decisions. They plan. They sharpen. Men with weak mental endurance fear silence because silence makes them face their own mind, and their mind feels messy and uncomfortable. If you can't be alone without reaching for stimulation, you're not addicted to content. You're addicted to escape. Fourth habit, living on small talk. Small talk is normal at the surface of social life. It's a bridge. It warms up interaction. It's not bad. But if small talk is your entire personality, it signals something deeper. Low curiosity and low cognitive engagement. There are people who can talk for hours and say nothing. They repeat the same safe topics: weather, traffic, gossip, surface level complaints, because it requires no thinking. Psychologists call something related to this need for cognition, the tendency to enjoy effortful thinking. Intelligent minds tend to have higher need for cognition. They like ideas. They like exploring. They like reasoning. Low intelligence habits keep conversation shallow because depth demands mental work. Depth risks being wrong. Depth requires attention. So if your mind avoids depth in conversation, it's usually avoiding depth everywhere else too. Fifth habit, confidence without competence. You've seen this type: loud, interrupting, talking like an expert on everything, correcting people aggressively, using big words incorrectly, acting like questions are weakness. This is where the Dunning-Kruger effect shows itself in everyday life. The less someone knows, the more confident they often feel because they don't understand what they don't know. True intelligence is often quieter. It asks questions. It clarifies. It admits uncertainty. It says, I'm not sure, but here's what I think. It updates with new evidence. Fake intelligence uses volume to hide fragility. And here's the danger. The loud, ignorant man doesn't just look foolish. He becomes impossible to teach. That's the real problem. He's locked out of growth. Sixth habit, rigid rule, following without reasoning. Some people treat rules like scripture. If the instructions say something stupid, they still do it. If the plan is clearly failing, they refuse to adjust. If the recipe says 20 minutes but the food is raw, they keep waiting because that's what it says. That's not discipline. That's mental laziness. Intelligence is the ability to adapt when reality doesn't match the plan. Rigid thinkers don't operate on reality. They operate on scripts. And when life changes, which it always does, scripted, people break. They panic. They blame. They freeze. Flexible minds adjust. They test. They iterate. They move. Seventh habit, conspiracy addiction and superstition obsession. Conspiracies are attractive for one reason. They give simple answers to complex problems. They turn messy reality into a clean story with villains, hidden truths, and dramatic explanations. That feels powerful. It makes people feel like insiders. It gives them certainty. But often it's just cognitive shortcutting, choosing a story over evidence. A smart mind can entertain a hypothesis without marrying it. It can say, possible. What's the proof? What's the counter evidence? What would I need to see to believe this? A weak mind grabs the first dramatic explanation and builds identity around it. And that identity becomes a prison. Because once you start relying on conspiracies, you stop developing skills. You stop solving problems. You start narrating reality instead of improving your position within it. Eighth habit, instant gratification living. This one is destroying modern men. Every time you feel discomfort, your brain now has a quick escape available. Scrolling, snacking, porn, gaming, shopping, dopamine hits on demand. The issue isn't pleasure. The issue is conditioning. If every discomfort is met with relief, you train your brain to avoid effort. You train yourself to quit early. You train yourself to need stimulation to function. Delaying gratification is not a moral virtue. It's a cognitive advantage. A man who can tolerate boredom, tension, and effort will outperform a man who needs immediate reward every time. Because life rewards the man who can do what's hard when it's not fun. Ninth habit, poor listening. Poor listening is one of the cleanest tells of low intelligence because listening is cognitive work. Listening means you hold information, process it, and update your understanding. Listening means you can handle complexity without shutting down. Listening means you're not so consumed by your own ego that you can't absorb something new. Low intelligence listeners interrupt. They wait for their turn to speak. They nod without comprehension. They miss the point, then argue the wrong thing. Strong minds listen like hunters. They're tracking meaning. They're looking for patterns. They're absorbing what matters. If you improve nothing else, improve listening. It upgrades your learning speed, your social power, your leadership, and your relationships. 10th habit, reflexive dismissal. You've heard it. That's dumb. That'll never work. That's pointless. I'm not doing that. Reflex rejection feels like confidence, but it's often fear of effort disguised as certainty. Intelligent people don't accept every idea, but they explore before they reject. They ask, what's the point? What's the benefit? What's the downside? Where does this work? Low intelligence avoids thinking by shutting down the conversation early. Dismissal is the lazy man's defense mechanism against learning. 11th habit, dopamine, addiction through constant consumption. Scrolling isn't evil. TV isn't evil. Games aren't evil. But when hours vanish daily, your brain is being trained toward fragmentation. You lose deep focus. You lose patience. You lose the ability to sit with a problem long enough to solve it. You become restless, bored easily, irritable without stimulation. And then you wonder why you can't learn skills, stay disciplined, or build anything meaningful. Because your brain is being trained like a dog. Short rewards, short attention, short effort. A strong mind is trained for depth. Depth requires boredom, tolerance. If you can't tolerate boredom, you can't build competence. 12th habit, trend following identity. Every week, a new persona. New slang, new ideology, new obsession, new brand, new core. Some people call it being open-minded. Often it's just lack of self. Humans copy to feel safe. But the question is whether you copy consciously or unconsciously. Intelligence asks, do I actually want this? Does it match my values? Is it useful? Is it true? Low intelligence absorbs whatever is popular because it saves the effort of choosing. A man without a stable identity is easy to sell to, easy to influence, and easy to control. 13th habit, repeating mistakes without reflection. This is the most brutal one because it's the difference between experience and growth. Some men do the same thing for years and call it experience. But experience without reflection is just repetition. The man who keeps dating the same type of woman and getting the same outcome isn't unlucky. He's unexamined. The man who keeps making the same financial mistakes isn't cursed. He's unskilled. The man who keeps losing jobs the same way isn't a victim. He's uncorrected. Intelligence isn't never failing. Intelligence is failing once and extracting the lesson. The difference between a smart man and a stuck man is not talent, it's feedback. Smart men collect feedback. Stuck men protect ego. 14th habit, confusing information for understanding. A lot of people know things. They consume podcasts, videos, posts, headlines. They can repeat concepts, but their life never changes. That's because knowledge is not understanding. Understanding means you can apply, explain, test, and use information to solve problems. It's integration. Low intelligence collects information like entertainment. Smart men collect information like tools. If you can't implement what you consume, you're not learning. You're distracting yourself with the feeling of learning. 15th habit, living in reaction mode. This is the invisible trap. Low intelligence living is reactive. Whatever happens controls you. Mood controls you. Notifications control you. People control you. Urges control you. You wake up and immediately check your phone. You respond to messages before you set your plan. You start the day inside other people's priorities. Then you wonder why your life feels scattered. A high functioning mind is proactive. It decides first, then responds. It sets its rhythm and protects its attention. It doesn't let the outside world write the script. Now here's the part that matters. None of these habits are who you are. They're what you repeat, and what you repeat becomes you. So if you want to upgrade your mind, you don't need a new personality. You need new standards. Here's how you reverse this. First, protect sleep like a serious man. Not because it's comfortable, but because it's performance. A tired brain is a weak brain, and weak brains make expensive decisions. Second, train solitude. 10 minutes a day with no stimulation, no phone, no music. Just thinking. If you can't do 10, that's proof you need it. Third, practice deep focus. Set a timer. Read, work, learn. Build for 30 minutes without switching. Your brain will resist. That resistance is the muscle growing. Fourth, upgrade your inputs. If you scroll, scroll with intention. If you watch, watch with purpose. You should be building skills, not just consuming noise. Fifth, develop a code. Standards for your behavior. Standards for your attention. Standards for your habits. A man with standards becomes smarter by default because standards force consistent decisions. Sixth, replace superstition with mechanism. When something works, ask why. When something fails, ask why. Train your mind to search for causes, not stories. Seventh, delay gratification intentionally. Do one hard thing daily that gives no immediate reward. Work out, study, discipline nutrition, uncomfortable conversation, skill practice. Your brain learns effort is normal. Eighth, become a student again. Ask more questions. Admit what you don't know. Curiosity is intelligence in motion. Because the truth is, low intelligence isn't always about genetics. It's often about training. It's a lifestyle, a set of habits that slowly dull your mind while you tell yourself you're fine. Most people will hear this, feel slightly attacked, and go back to distraction. That's why most people stay average. But if you're the type of man who wants an edge, real edge, not motivational quotes, then you take this seriously. You treat your mind like an asset. You protect it. You train it. You upgrade it. Because the man with a sharp mind wins everywhere. Career, money, relationships, self-control, leadership, and respect. And once you see how many people are mentally untrained, you realize the bar is lower than you thought. You don't need to be a genius. You just need to stop living like a distracted child. That's the shift. And if you make it, you'll feel it fast. clearer thinking, better decisions, stronger discipline, and a presence that makes people take you seriously before you say a word.